Hello! We have one story today where one mother and child encounter a series of people who just couldn't catch a hint if it slapped them in the face. You know the kind. The ones who are obviously wrong. They know it. Everyone knows it. Even their kids know it. But they just can't be wrong and decide to double down on being smooth-brained potato heads. Our only story today has a child too sweet to ever say no, and other children who are compassionate and understanding. But then come their mothers. Story 1. I have a 10-year-old son. He is a semi-ambulant wheelchair user. He has a medical condition that makes walking difficult, and the older he gets, the more difficult it is. He can walk short distances, 10 to 12 steps, but then it starts to get painful. So he uses a scoot board, think square skateboard with caster wheels on each corner, to get around the house and a wheelchair out of the house. He does need his chair, even though he can stand and walk, and he is very independent. Nothing is holding him back. He is also very social. He loves talking to his specialists and knows all the nurses by name and their pets' names. He is also well known in our local area. The employees in the shops all know him. He talks to everyone. Before I start this story, I should add that his wheelchair is not a standard hospital gray wheelchair. It is electric blue, has Pokemon wheel covers, and his rain guards and armrests have stickers of animals on them. The armrests flip up so he has access to the wheels, and they look like wings behind his chair. It is very much modified and personalized. It isn't a gray stock standard chair. So today we had our monthly pediatrician appointment. We have been seeing the same doctor since birth, so he is like a family friend now. A few days ago, luckily at night, during a storm, a tree branch fell onto the building. That took out some windows and caused some water damage, and they have been doing some repair work. So his pediatrician's normal office was unusable, and they had converted another space to use. But this meant going up 5 steps. Our pediatrician is a late 30s, early 40s, chilled out surfer dude with long hair. He came out to the waiting room and told my son about the room change and that he had to tackle some stairs today, or he could have a piggyback ride. Of course, my son chose the piggyback, with a giggle. After checking with me that it was okay, he scooped him up and off they went. So I parked his wheelchair out of the way against a wall in the waiting room and followed them in. After his appointment, my son was piggybacked out to the waiting room and our pediatrician popped him on a chair and left to speak with the receptionist. I looked around and his wheelchair was gone. I walked around the corner of the waiting room and there was a child about 8-ish wheeling himself around in it. I know wheelchairs are a fascination to kids, and I really don't mind that he was having a wheel around in it. I find it helps with education and acceptance of kids with disabilities and how much harder life is sometimes, even if wheelchairs are fun. I walked over to him and asked him if he had fun wheeling himself around. The child said he had, and I told him it was my son's wheelchair and I needed it back now, so I could take my son home. He jumped straight out of the chair, smiled at me and said thanks, and wheeled it towards my son. All was good until the screech happened. An entitled mom says, "What are you doing? That is my son's wheelchair. He was riding in that." I replied, "Actually, it is my son's." She cut me off. "No, it isn't. My son saw it first." At this point, my son stood up and walked the few steps towards me. He was getting concerned. So I said, "This doesn't belong to the practice. I purchased it for my son. It is his." "No, you didn't. He doesn't even need a wheelchair. He can walk," and she turns the wheelchair towards her, but I held onto the handles firmly. I told my son to go and sit back down as I saw this wasn't going to be a quick enough fix for him to keep standing. So I said, "Please stop yelling at me. This is my son's wheelchair. I have hundreds of photos of him in it on my phone. See?" I opened the Photos app on my phone and showed her photos of him in the chair and with the flywheel attached. "That is a different chair. This doesn't have that thing on the front of it." She pulled the chair towards her. "That thing is his bicycle hand crank attachment that allows him to go fast on the bike track like the other kids. It attaches here using these attachments." I point to the attachments. "If you look at the chair in this picture, it has the Pokemon wheel covers just like this one, see? This is his chair." I pulled the chair back towards me. "No, it isn't. Why can't you wait your turn? Give it back." At this point, the pediatrician comes back from speaking with the receptionist and the entitled mother tries to involve him in the discussion. He ignores her and silently takes the wheelchair from me, walks it around entitled mom, scoops up my son and settles him in his chair. He turns to the entitled mother and says that is my son's name, chair. It belongs to him, not to the practice. You can't have it. We don't accept stealing, and the welfare of our existing patients is our focus. Your actions today are contrary to acceptable behavior in this practice. We have decided to not accept your family to the practice. Please leave. Entitled mom screamed, shouted at me about how I had cost her an appointment with my lies and how it wasn't fair. Our pediatrician just put both arms out to his sides, think big stretching arms forming a T shape with his body, and stood between her and us and repeated for her to leave. He said there will be no further discussion and she wouldn't be seen today or any other day. She huffed, grabbed her very embarrassed-looking child's hand, and left. Our pediatrician was very apologetic, but honestly, he couldn't have done a better job in dealing with the entitled mom. He reached over the counter, grabbed a lollipop, and gave it to my son. He told me there would be no out-of-pocket payment for us today and to just make an appointment for next month. He is an awesome pediatrician and human. But as the title says, we encountered not one, but two entitled moms today. We drove the hour and a bit home to our smallish town and stopped at the supermarket to grab some groceries. My son likes to zoom around the supermarket, getting items and bringing them back to me, before zooming off again for the next thing on the list. He knows all the staff and they all talk to him, direct him to where he needs to find his item, and they talk about their pets with him because he is a huge animal lover. It is a social outing for him, so I usually start at the front of the store and make my way through the aisles, while he, my zoomer, goes and gets random stuff. We were doing our usual thing and he didn't come back. I didn't think much of it because the staff will often steal him away to the bakery for broken biscuits or an extra donut they can't fit into a package. As I rounded the corner of the next aisle, I see my son at the other end of the aisle, standing while holding onto a shelf and another child sitting in his wheelchair. From the way he is standing, I can tell my son is in pain, and he is talking to the child, and entitled mom is talking to my son as well. I can see she is getting animated, but from the other end of the aisle, I can't hear what they are saying. I hurried up the aisle and take hold of my son from the shelf. He is crying, and he tells me that the kid won't get out of his chair and entitled mom won't make him move. So I say to the child, "Honey, can you pop out of my son's chair? He's in a lot of pain and needs to get back into it." My son has started to shake, and I know he is in quite a bit of pain and his legs will soon just give out from under him. So I lower him to the floor. Entitled mom says, "No, he won't. He is having a turn. Your bratty kid wouldn't even let him go up and down the aisle more than once before asking for it back. My son has a sore ankle and I am going to tell the manager we need it more than you." I said, "What? This isn't a hire chair. It is my son's chair." "Don't be ridiculous. I see that chair all the time being used by kids." "You see the chair in here a lot because my son and I come here a lot for our groceries, but it is his chair." "No, it isn't. It is in the store every time I come in and different kids are using it." "You're mistaken. It's my son's chair. I have photos of him in it. He needs it back." I open my phone and try and find a picture of my son without the flywheel attachment to avoid the same discussion as the morning. "Nope, we are taking it," and off she goes, wheeling her son away. My son lets out a full-on wail that is a combination of pain and distress that his wheels are leaving. I run the few steps after her and grab out at the chair and firmly say, "No, you aren't taking my son's chair." The wail and my shouting has employees popping out from aisles, and the manager comes quickly from the service desk area. Entitled mom tries to preempt the discussion and yells at the manager my son has had the chair long enough and her son has a sore ankle. Wow. So he needs it more, and they should buy more hire chairs so that there are more available to shoppers. I was standing back a little from them because once the manager arrived, I knew he would deal with it and I needed to check on my son down the aisle on the floor, crying. I was trying to calm him from a distance by letting him know I wasn't far away, while not letting a $4,500 wheelchair out of my sight. The manager looks at me, looks at her, looks back at me with this look of "what the?" on his face and asks where's my son. I point and tell him down the aisle on the floor. With a look of horror, he asks if they had tipped him out of his chair. I said, "I don't know what exactly happened. He was standing holding a shelf when I found him." He turns around and almost roars at this woman to get her son out of a disabled person's wheelchair so we can get him off the floor. It doesn't belong to the store. They don't hire wheelchairs here. The poor child was trying to get out of the chair, and entitled mom keeps pushing him back down into the chair, telling him that he needs it. The child is nearly in tears and getting very upset. Meanwhile, 2 staff members have found my son and are now sitting on the floor with him, holding his hand and drying his tears. The manager is losing his mind whilst trying to be professional, but I can see he is in disbelief at this woman's stupidity. Then the troops arrive. In the background, I see an employee with 2 police officers in tow. It looked like they were on a break and were grabbing things to eat. The entitled mom turned and was all relieved that the police were there to sort out this manager and started on with her wailing story. The policewoman shushed the entitled mom and spoke with the manager, who explained that my son and I were regular customers. He knew us and this was my son's wheelchair, but entitled mom still insisted it was a hire chair. My son was currently sitting on the floor in the next aisle, and entitled mom wouldn't let her son get out of his chair and insisted he used it. The male officer walked forward and looked down the aisle at my son and nodded at his partner. The female officer very firmly told the entitled mom to get her child out of my son's chair immediately, or she would arrest her for theft. Her child tried again to get out of the chair, and she pushed him back in again. The officer pulled the wheelchair back and asked the child to hop out, and he immediately did. The entitled mom wailed. The officer then turned the wheelchair around to the male officer, who walked down the aisle with it. I don't know exactly what happened next, as I was getting my son back into his chair and calming him down. The assistant manager took us back to the manager's office so we had a quiet space. She got my son some water so he could have pain medication, and in about 20 minutes he was fine. He told us that he had stood up and walked 2 steps forward to get something off a higher shelf, and the other child had jumped into his wheelchair. The child had asked if he could ride it up the aisle and back. My son said sure, thinking that this kid would just go up and back and he could get back in. But entitled mom wouldn't let that happen. He started to cry again, and I told him he was very kind to the little boy and to not let an entitled mom ruin his day. After a while, the manager came into the office and said that the woman had been banned from the store. The officers had escorted her out after he had issued her with the ban paperwork. He said she had been causing trouble in the store for a while with her Karen-ness, and they were glad to see the back of her. He apologized profusely for what had happened. When we left his office, we found that our shopping was all bagged up and ready for us to go. They had taken my shopping list from the trolley, finished my shopping, checked it out at no charge, and bagged it all up ready for us. When we got home, there were a few extra treats in the bags for my son. The icing on the cake is that our town only has 1 supermarket. The entitled mom now has to drive 45 minutes to the next town to shop. I hope this teaches her a lesson, though I suspect probably not. Update. He had a great day resting yesterday, playing Lego, doing some schoolwork, then some science experiments in the afternoon. He hammed it up for a couple more treats left over from the day before, but he is 100% fine. We are definitely blessed by our community. I have taken suggestions on board for marking it for ownership. I will try some of the non-permanent ones because resale value is important. Wheelchairs are expensive, and as he is still growing, they need to be regularly replaced. We are off to another medical appointment today, and he is firmly staying in his chair. In the comments, No Parking Past 6 p.m. said, "Man, that's gotta suck for your little guy. I hope he's all right." OP replied, "He is well and truly okay. He was a little sugared up from treats last night, but he is building a mega Lego mansion at the moment. Last night, we talked about how we have good people in our lives who take care of us and how lucky we are. We also talked about how the kids tried to do the right thing and the mothers got it wrong, and we celebrated the kids." Aunt Jay said, "Poor kid. Wonder if it would help at all to have his name painted or stamped on the back of his seat or something, where it's covered when he's seated, so it's not messing up the look of the chair." OP replied, "He normally rarely gets out of his chair when we are out. There were just 2 random incidents in one day where he had to get out. I thought it was personalized enough for any sane person to be able to see that it isn't a hire chair." Any sane person? Unfortunately, as we all know, assuming people are sane was the mistake made here. There is no sanity with these entitled moms. I have to say, I can see how there might have been an initial mix-up at both a doctor's office and even a grocery store, because these wheels sound pretty epic, and back in the day there used to be some pretty cool get-ups at the grocery store. But who the heck gets into an argument over something like this? What? Thank goodness these other kids seem to have ditched the Karen gene. There is hope after all. That's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.